everyone, this is Pete, and with the impending release of Donkey Kong Bonanza for Nintendo Switch 2, today we're taking a look at the Atari 8-bit version of Donkey Kong, a game I've always been fond of, and probably one of the first video games I ever played. The Atari 8-bit port of Donkey Kong was handled by Atari themselves, or more specifically an individual known as Landon Dyer. Dyer isn't credited in the game itself, as the port hails from the era where Atari still wasn't crediting their game designers properly, though there is an extremely convoluted way to make his initials appear on the title screen. Regular viewers may feel like Landon Dyer's name is familiar, and you'd be right. He was the creative mind behind the excellent Myriapede, found on the Page 6 public domain library disc number 1, which I covered elsewhere on this channel a while back. He sent Myriapede to the Atari Program Exchange, Atari's short-lived arm that published user-submitted software, and had it rejected on the grounds that it was a substantial copy of Atari's own Centipede, with the not-so-subtle implication being that he would get sued if he tried to sell it anywhere. This is the main reason that Myriapede ended up in the public domain. However, a few weeks later, Dyer got a call from Atari who wanted to know if he was interested in a job. Of course he was, and he made a point of showing Myriapede to those who were interviewing him. Writing on the web in 2008, Dyer recalls that one of the people he was talking to was the author of the official Atari 8-bit port of Centipede, who very quickly conceded that Myriapede was a lot better than his own effort, and a job offer followed shortly afterwards. Dyer was thrilled to get a job with Atari, but his excitement was tempered somewhat by the fact his first assignment was to do an arcade conversion of Donkey Kong, a game that he found, in his words, loud, pointless and annoying. Nonetheless, he knuckled down to the hard work of porting the game, and back in those days, arcade ports were rather challenging. The reason for this was that licensing agreements for home conversions of arcade games were very simple. They allowed a company such as Atari the rights to convert the game to a home system such as the Atari 8-bit, and that was it. The original developers didn't get involved at all, no design documents were provided, and not even a copy of the game was provided in most cases. Indeed, Dyer recalls that the initial phase of developing the Donkey Kong port involved simply playing the game in a hotel lobby enough to get to know it really well, then putting together a design document based on his observations, and finally coding it against the marketing department's tight deadlines to get it out in time for Christmas. The result is actually one of the best home ports of Donkey Kong, though Dyer having to work from his own observations rather than official design documentation means that there are a few differences between the arcade version and the Atari 8-bit port. Notably though, the Atari 8-bit version of Donkey Kong is one of the few to contain all the levels of the arcade game. Many other home ports omit the stage with the conveyor belts, colloquially known as the Pie Factory level, but in Dyer's port it was present and correct. As for the Easter egg featuring Dyer's initials, Dyer himself forgot all about it until a man named Don Hodges discovered it in 2009, all in the name of securing a $75 prize from Digital Press's catalogue of as yet undiscovered Easter eggs in games. Dyer recalled the Easter egg was totally not worth it in his words, but Hodges was thrilled to have finally uncovered another secret from the early days of gaming. I've always been very fond of this version of Donkey Kong, and as I say, I'm pretty sure it was one of the first video games I ever played. So let's go play Donkey Kong. Okay, here we are with Donkey Kong for Atari 8-bit, copyright 1981 to 1983 Nintendo. So press select for 2-player game and press option to pick difficulty and then start to play. So, yeah, we have a few different difficulty settings that we can choose between, but let's just go from the beginning, the beginner level. And here we go. So, this version was my first encounter with Donkey Kong. I didn't play the arcade game until many years after it was current. So this was my sole encounter with it. And veterans of the arcade game will notice a few differences from the arcade original. Most notably, on that first screen, that the girders are the opposite way round to the arcade version. And this is because, like we said in the intro, Landon Dyer was working mostly from memory and his own observations. And so it's kind of unsurprising that he got a couple of things wrong. Because he had no design documents to work with. The only copy of the game he had to play with for quite a while was a machine in the lobby of the hotel where he was staying. Atari did eventually spring for an arcade machine of their own so he could work a bit more efficiently. So yeah, this follows the model of the American version of Donkey Kong, which I believe there are a couple of differences between the American and the Japanese version in terms of what order the levels appear in. So you'll notice in that first round through the game, it went straight from level 1 to level 4. And that happens in the original American version of the arcade game. Whereas, I believe the Japanese version, and certainly the NES version, goes to level 2 after that. Which is this level here. And this level is pretty accurate to the arcade version, with the arrangement of the platforms and such. And of course, that bloody springboard. And quite notably, the NES version, which I was playing the other night, just for comparison's sake. The NES version misses those interstitial screens with the height and so on. And how high can you get? Oh, that's annoying. Yeah. So, like I say, this was my first encounter with Donkey Kong, and I'm pretty sure it was one of the first video games I played as well. I mentioned at the start this was... Actually, it was at a different intro I mentioned that, but I've mentioned elsewhere on this channel, let's say, that many of the games we had for Atari 8-bit back in the day were illicit copies that my dad and my brother acquired from the local computer club. Which was, among other things, a big old piracy exchange. Oh dear. My joystick skills are letting me down. Yeah, so the reason why I think this was one of the first video games I ever played was because we had this game in our collection of illicitly acquired copied discs full of menus that each contained multiple video games. Because you could fit quite a few Atari 8-bit games on one single floppy disk, because a lot of them were like 8K or 16K each. And this was on one of the earliest ones in the collection. This might actually have been on disc number 1, actually. I would have to get the big box of discs out to check that for certain, but it was certainly on one of the very early discs in our collection, suggesting it was one of the first ones that we acquired. And there were a few games from those early discs that I vividly remember playing for the first time. There was this, there was River Raid, there was Shadow World from Synapse Software, and a bunch of others. But yeah, this was definitely a very early game with me. And I've always been very fond of it. And I'm very impressed by what a good port it is. Because considering the conditions under which Landai was working to make this game, the actual quality of this game is remarkable. Oopsie. Yeah, it's amazing that it came out this well, considering the conditions under which he was working. Oh dear, keep banging my head on that. And like we said with a few other arcade ports, but this situation with arcade ports continued well into the 16-bit era. You may recall a while back we looked at Jaleco's Rodland, ported by Storm, and the sales curve. And that was considered to be a very good port at the time, but it's not completely super authentic, because again, the developers didn't have access to the original game. In that instance, they did actually have some graphics sent to them by Jaleco, which is more than a lot of people got. But even then, they got sent those graphics in a format that was all garbled and mixed up, and they had to figure out what went where and what the colours were and all that sort of thing. So yeah, in many cases, arcade ports of the 80s were more creative reinterpretations of games rather than direct ports as such. In most cases, they weren't actually touching the original code and graphics of the games at all. They were recreating them from scratch. Like I say, this is a particularly good example of it coming out very well. Right, Donkey Kong is recognisable, Mario is recognisable. You can see what's going on. It looks like the arcade game. Because I granted the level layout is a little bit different. Oh no! But the sound effects are there, the music's there. And kind of mind-blowing. When you consider how a retro re-release today is typically the original game emulated, which is a technical accomplishment in itself, of course, but a different kind of technical accomplishment to this. Right, I'm gonna clear this level. Alright, watch out for the bouncy thing. He's done it! He's done it! I remember always finding that noise quite frightening when I was a kid. I got frightened by all sorts of weird things when I was a kid. But yeah, I found that sound, coupled with the sort of spiky teeth Donkey Kong is represented as having in this version, genuinely quite threatening. Let's have some hammer time. Oh dear. Oh dear, I did that poorly. Come on, this level's easy. This is you've done it. Have some easy bonus points. Home straight level. Alright, let's try hammer time again. Oh, I remember loving that sound when I was a kid. It's a very satisfying sound. There we go, round 2 finished. Poor old Donkey Kong. I'm really intrigued by Donkey Kong Bonanza. Like, I don't care about the lore because, you know, it's Donkey Kong. But I'm intrigued to see what's going on. It looks like a really good game. It's from the Mario Odyssey developers, and they did an amazing job on Mario Odyssey, their last game, and they've had a good few years to work on this one now. It's the Pie Factory! Yeah, like I said in the intro, a lot of versions of this game missed this version out. Missed this level out. For whatever reason. I don't know if it was particularly difficult to code or something like that. There's certainly a lot going on this level. A lot of enemies. And I guess you've got the... Oops! You've got the logic of the different conveyor belts going in different directions at the same time. Oh, game over. Disappointing. Very disappointing. Let's have a drink and try again. Right. In fact, we should be able to skip straight to that stage. Yeah, here we are. Starting on level 3. Oh no. It's all gone horribly wrong. Right, concentrate. That's more like it. Alright. Pie time. Let's get some nice bonus points where we can. Lovely stuff. Alright, and then face the gaunt. Oh no, that was never going to end well, was it? This is difficult. Alright, let's enjoy some bonus points while we can. There's so many of those enemies, that's the problem. Don't come down here. Don't come down here. Don't come down here. Thank you. Alright, there we go. Alright, then this living nightmare again. I do love the sound effects in Donkey Kong. It established some really peculiar conventions. Like, I always found that weird sort of squeaky noise that Mario makes while he's walking in this to be quite endearing, but also very odd. It's like, why is he making that noise? He's done it! He's done it! Right. Can we make it around a complete round of level 3? Let's find out together. It is quite impressive how many things on screen this version handles, because if you're unfamiliar, the Atari has 4 hardware sprites. Oopsie! Yeah, the Atari 8-bit has 4 hardware sprites, known as players, and 4 teeny tiny hardware sprites known as missiles that can be combined into a 5th player if you want. And each one of those players is a single colour sprite. Meaning if you wanted a multicolour sprite, you'd have to combine multiple players. Now, I reckon Mario is probably 3 of those sprites by himself. And I reckon that's the case because he moves very smoothly. And he's just got that sort of chunky look about him that kind of matches up with how the built-in players work. But you'll notice there's a lot more enemy sprites than that on the screen. Moving independently and pretty smoothly, it has to be said as well. So those must have all been done in software somehow. They're not moving by character. They're moving pretty smoothly. Not as smoothly as Mario, which is what tips you off that they're software rather than hardware based. But yeah, they're multicolored objects that move independently, and there's a lot of them on screen at the same time. So yeah, Landerdine knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. And I mean, that was very clear from Myriapede. Because Myriapede was a very technically accomplished version of Centipede, which is why it helped him get a job at Atari. That was easy. So yeah, I actually didn't know that... oh, that's strange. It went back to this first stage. Is that normal? I guess it is. So now we're at 100 meters, so then we do this one. Okay, so each time round is getting a little bit longer. I'm not entirely sure if that's the exact way the arcade game did things. As I say, I'm pretty certain the NES version doesn't do it that way. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, it's all over. It's all over. Alright, and I think that's probably enough Donkey Kong for today. But yeah, hopefully you can see what we played there, that this is a very, very good version of Donkey Kong. And yeah, I just enjoy the novelty of playing a Nintendo game on an Atari platform. It's a silly thing. It's a silly thing, but I do like it. And there's several other examples of this. There's Donkey Kong Jr., which we're going to look at soon. And there's also the original Mario Brothers, which we'll have to have a look at sometime as well. I haven't set that up for recording in this current session, but we'll have to have a look at that sometime very soon, because the Atari 8-bit version of that is very good. And it's a fun game. But anyway, let's leave that there for today. That was Donkey Kong for Atari 8-bit, developed by Land and Dyer. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.